Hi, I'm Fraser Christian from the Coastal Survival School. I'm down on the beach in West Dorset today to make a short video on coastal safety, but we need to know that the sea is not just a playground. It is a wild environment. I'm obviously concerned about people losing their lives at sea. I'm also really concerned about the people that have to go and then save those people and put their own lives in danger. I'm going to give you some information in this video that is going to save your lives and hopefully protect their lives as well. Okay, so the first thing we want to do when we go to a beach is look around, see if there's signs on the beach where you are that possibly identify any dangers. And here's a list of hazards and restrictions. Be aware of large waves and strong currents when swimming in the sea, but the sea can change at any moment. Okay, the wind is nice and calm now, but if the wind suddenly picks up, it's going to push all of that water either off the beach or onto the beach. And one of the classic ones to do with people getting lost, and it's well documented, and I've even heard about people doing it one day and getting rescued, and then the second day, and then the third day, and that's inflatables. Okay, inflatable boats, lilos, great fun to paddle off, but if the wind turns and blows offshore, okay, you're going to get blown right out to sea. It's really hard to paddle against the wind unless you're in a professional kayak and you know what you're doing. And professional kayakers and people who take to the water normally wear life jackets. They normally have safety equipment with them. Unless we're able to signal for rescue, possibly you've got a mobile phone. If you've checked that you've got a signal, you may be able to call the Coast Guard. And to call the Coast Guard, you need to dial 999. Exactly the same if you're going to call the police or the fire service. You will get asked, what service do you require? You will ask for the Coast Guard. The first thing I'm going to do if I'm on my own or I'm heading off somewhere is I'm going to write a small note, leave it on the car if I'm in a car park and there's no one there, or I'm going to speak to the car park attendant, the person in the local pub, the person at the ice cream parlour, and then tell them where I'm going. So we've walked down onto the beach, and the first thing I've headed for is the safety sign. So going back to what we were talking about earlier with our location, okay, we noted that we were at Cogden Beach, but on this sign there's also a Pacific marker location, and right up the top there you can see it says sign location 12. Because if we were to tell somebody where we were, I mean, we may not be the person in danger, we may need to call the Coast Guard, we may see someone that's being blown away. And just like in first aid, what you don't want to do is endanger your life to try and save somebody else's. So you may try and jump in the sea to save those. Again, unless you're an Olympic swimmer, it would not be recommended. But at the top here we can see it says beware strong currents. Beware steep shelving beaches. You will not be able to fight against the weather and nature, and especially the tides, unless you're a super strong athlete swimmer. Okay, you do not want to be going in anywhere where it says strong tides. If you get it wrong and you get caught in a tide race, whether it be a rip tide coming out from the middle of a bay, remember the water has to go somewhere once it's come into the beach, so whichever direction that water's going, it's going to want to take you with it. And unless you can swim out to the side of that, or you wait till it goes back the other way, so on this beach we're going to have the waves coming in and then the undercurrent coming back out, hitting what it says up there, the steep shelving beach. So the power of the waves that are coming in, as I said earlier, they're hitting the shelving beach and they're having to come back out underneath. So you must go with that. So if you're lucky, you'll come in on a wave and you'll be able to get out of the sea. If you time it wrong and you don't get into the beach, the water's going to be going back out again, but pulling from underneath. So it's going to have a tendency to pull you down as well as backwards. Okay? You're going to have to swim backwards or let yourself drift backwards with it. Okay? What happens then to people is, if they don't know this, they start to panic. Okay? They start to try and fight naturally against the direction the sea's pulling them, which may often be out to sea, and you want to get back onto the beach. Okay? So you start to panic and fight against the power of the sea. Quite quickly you become tired and aware that the water's often cold, especially in this country. Energy starts to become depleted. You have your extremities out as you're trying to swim. All of your body heat is being drawn out of your body because your limbs are stretched out. You're starting to use energy trying to fight against this. You become really tired, and at that point you are completely at the mercy of the sea, and you will end up going where it wants to take you, which, as I said, is not often onto the beach. So if you do find yourself in the currents, remember, you can't fight against it, you have to go with it. If you find yourself getting carried out to sea, okay, and quite often there's a riptide, the only way you can get out of that is to try and swim to the side of it, okay? If you can't swim to the side of it, the best thing you can do, and this is what we get taught in the sea survival situation, which luckily we're hopefully wearing a life jacket at the time, okay, but you're going to need to try and pull your knees up into your body and your arms up into your body, okay, and float with your head out, with one hand possibly covering your face so the sea doesn't smash into your face and drain you. This is a lot easier if you've got a life jacket on, okay? Wearing a life jacket is not because we think, oh, we're definitely going to go into danger, so it's not an excuse to not have one on when you're at the sea. Everybody carries a spare wheel in their car. We don't always expect to get a puncture. Carrying certain safety items, and if you do engage in anything like a lilo, okay, or an airbed, something that you're going to float and possibly get blown out to sea, you should have a life jacket on. There are other things that we need to consider, and we're going to cover that in the rest of the video. So what else is on this board we need to be aware about? And this is something that is generic wherever you go in the world, whenever you're engaging with the ocean. And it says there, beware of the tides. Tides are something that happen every day of the year, everywhere in the world, and they're caused by the effect of gravity on the moon. And what happens is, as we get closer and further away to the moon, it sucks and pulls the water out. And as it sucks it all up, when it lets go of it, it has to let it all pour back in somewhere, if you can think of it like that. Okay, so the tide comes in and out, and that's every single day. I've been walking around exposed headlands before, and been rather concerned seeing someone walking off round a headland that I know in a couple of hours is going to have the sea coming up against the rocks, and they're not going to be able to come back, and saying to them, are you sure you're okay to be able to get to the next beach, the tide's coming in? And they said to me, and this is completely true, will the tide come back in today? The tide comes back in every day, okay? It comes in and out. It comes in and out at different levels, and this is to do with neap and spring tides. The most important thing to remember, first of all, that it will come in and out every day though, okay? After that, know that there are things called spring and neap tides. The spring tides don't just happen in the spring, they happen around every single full moon and every single new moon. And the biggest part of that tide is generally just after the new or full moon. This is when there's the largest effect, or the most effect of gravity on the earth and the sea, and it pushes and pulls the sea out at its greatest lengths, okay? This is great when we want to do stuff like coastal foraging and we want to get down onto the rocks and the reefs, we want lots of beach exposed. But this is also when there's going to be the most amount of water travelling in and out as well. Okay, so if you are going to go into the sea, that is when there's going to be the strongest tides. The neap tides are always on the first quarter or the third quarter, so when the moon's about half, you can see half of the moon. That's where there's going to be the least effect, and there's going to be the least amount of water travelling in and out. Okay, so it's really important to learn about tides. Where do you find out about tides? You can go on the internet, you type in where you're going. Okay, today I'm at Cogden Beach, so I'd type in Cogden Beach tide times. It may not have it for this beach, so I'd look for the next largest port or harbour. So that may be West Bay, or it may say Weymouth. So you look at the tide times. They're available online. You can go to local fishing shops, or you can buy them online as books. And I like to have a book with me, and in my kit I've got a little book so I can reference the times. But you need to find out when they're happening. Now they are only a prediction, okay? They're only a prediction of going by the moon. Other things that are going to affect these tide heights are going to be the wind and the weather. High and low pressure is going to push or let the sea rise up in its height. The wind is going to be really apparent. So don't head off round a headland at low tide and think, oh, there's 5 or 10 metres of clear beach to walk round. We're going to be okay as long as we get back round here at low tide and we don't wait to the high tide, obviously, when the water's in. We're going to easily be able to safely walk back round this headland. We may have walked off for a picnic or something. But if the wind picks up and starts to blow on shore, suddenly this beach that you had loads of space to walk around is going to become possibly covered by water as the wind pushes all of the sea on shore. And what can quite quickly happen is your lovely little path that you had round the rocks to get through, or even through the rocks and lovely sandy patches, okay, are going to be covered in water. The wind's going to be blowing the sea, smashing against the rocks, and your point of home or your point of return is going to be cut off. And statistically, loads of people have to be rescued for simply being cut off by the tides. So we've come to the point where the sea meets the land, but obviously not at the moment because I'm sat here on the beach and there's no water around me. But here, it's just where the headland starts, okay? And here along the edge of the beach, you can quite clearly see all of the seaweed and all of the sticks that have been washed up by the high tide mark. Okay, so there's a visual indicator there if you know what you're looking for, and that's going to show you that at some point you will not be able to walk along this beach. There's a lovely cafe just at the end of this beach. People quite often park in the car park where we just started from, and they'll walk off along this beach. Most of them probably unaware that there's a tide, and this is why we're making this video today. So you've walked off to the cafe, the tide's out, you think, yeah, it's fine, the tide's not going to be back in for hours. You've looked at the tide time. We're going to walk back to the car after we've had a nice cream tea down there, but suddenly the weather turns, the wind picks up and it starts to blow on shore. Okay, this is quite a shallow beach at the top here, and then it goes away really steep at the bottom. So what's going to happen is the wind's going to blow the sea in, okay, and force it in. It's not just the tide that's pushing it, and it's going to hit that bank and break over. Human error and the chaos theory comes in. People walk off and they think, well, it's okay, I've checked out the tides, I've checked out the weather, it's going to be fine. We've got hours, we're going to leave it right to the last point, and then something happens, a wave comes in, washes your phone away, or you just lose your keys in the sand. Then you're there for an extra half an hour or an hour. It's too late by this point. The tides come in, the wind's picked up as well, you're cut off. Okay, so leave yourself plenty of time, don't push it right to the last minute. I generally am walking off the beach or make sure I'm round the headland before the tide's even started to come in, okay? I'm not going to gamble or try and dice against nature and leave it right to the last moment. If you gamble and you throw the dice against nature, only two things are going to happen. You're either going to be back telling the story or you're not, okay? So never push it and leave it to the last moment when you're going around headlands. So other dangers that are going to possibly cut off our return home when we've walked out around headlands are cliff falls. Pretty sandy, kind of mixed clay cliff here where we are, and it runs all the way around the Golden Cap, which is the highest hill on the south coast. Other places you're going to get granite, which is a little bit more stable, but still they can fall, okay? And I've been lucky enough to hear one of these cliff falls but never been caught in it. And it sounded like an articulated lorry or going over a bridge really fast or an earthquake. And tons and tons came down in this one fall, and basically the whole beach that you would have been able to walk round, the rocks went right down into the sea. I mean, it's literally like someone had got 20 or 30 skips, rubble skips, and emptied them of stone onto the beach. So that means all of a sudden you're having to swim round this cliff fall. Worst thing that could possibly happen is you're sat underneath it when it goes, and people have died along here from cliff falls. So there's lots of dangers, okay, but they're not dangerous if you look out for them. So I wouldn't sit underneath these cliffs, and I wouldn't walk around a headland where it looked like it was really unstable, especially if there's signs saying that the cliffs are unstable. And if you ever do see one, you'll know what I mean about the power of nature. It is tons and tons and tons of debris come down, and like I say, that's going to cut off your route. And remember, statistically, the Coast Guard rescue loads of people that have simply just been cut off by the tide.